Good evening everyone and welcome to our special online lecture in celebration of Earth Day. I am Tapajit Bhattacharya, host for this event today. Today we gather virtually from all corners of the country to recognize the beauty and vitality of our planet and to reaffirm our commitment to its care and preservation. Earth Day is a poignant reminder of the only home we have ever known, a blue-green oasis in the vastness of space. It is a day to reflect on our relationship with the environment and to act towards a sustainable future. Today, we are honored to have our respected principal sir, Dr. Devnath Palit among us, Professor Subrata Ghosh, Coordinator IQAC, and Dr. Shubhajit Ojha, Secretary Teachers Council are also with us. We also have our distinguished speaker, Shri Agni Mitra, IFS, Field Director, Dampa Tiger Reserve, Government of Mizoram with us. Without saying anything more, I would like to request our respected principal sir to welcome all of you and to express his feelings on this very special occasion. Over to you, sir.
Yeah. Good afternoon to you all. Thank you so much, Dr. Tapajit Bhattacharya, our colleagues in the Department of Conservation, for a nice introduction of this seminar, the need of the hour, Earth Day. So we have with us Professor Subrata Ghosh, my colleagues, Coordinator, IQAC, and Dr. Shubhajit Ojha, Secretary Teachers Council, Dr. Maitri Banerjee Chakraborty, and all the faculties of the Department of Conservation Biology, distinguished guests from all over the country, my beloved research scholar, my beloved students, and obviously my beloved Shri Agni Mitra, the resource person of today's seminar on online mode. So Shri Mitra is basically the IFS Field Director, Dampa Tiger Reserve. In addition to that, if I am not wrong, he is the research scholar under the supervision of Dr. Tapajit Bhattacharya in the Department of Conservation Biology under the Kazi Nazrul University. So without saying more, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude and heartfelt thanks to Shri Agni, though he is a very busy person in his field. Despite his busy schedule, he will share his vast experience and he will gather enormous information and knowledge about the conservation of conservation issues in the North Bengal, Northeast India, different aspects. And what we are facing today, the temperature rises, you will get in social media, then electronic media, press media, and basically the ground reality is that we indiscriminately not disturb our environment, and the environment will repay to us in terms of different the quality of the environment, air, water, soil, everything. And now the peoples all over the country, all over the world, they will realize if you do something on the environment, you will get it back. And environment will pay you immediately with interest, I think, say. So what we have to do and what we can do, say being a student of biological science, I think we'll learn how to conserve the natural resources, and as mentioned by Tapajit, that is sustainable, most talked about subject in all seminar, in my lecture, then conference, but now it is the time to act on ground reality. So though it is a very small department, our college is very, but within our campus, I think we have learned from Agni Mitra, and within our campus, we will try our level best. My earnest request to all my colleagues, my student research scholars, please do something to save our first your college campus, and then do you think bigly, globally, then nationally, how to preserve your environment. Thank you so much, and I wish you all the best for the seminar. Once again, my sincere thanks and heartfelt thanks to Agni Mitra. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your valuable insights and the time you spared for us. Now I would like to request Professor Subrata Ghosh, Coordinator IQAC, to express his feelings on this occasion of Earth Day. Sir.
Good afternoon, good evening, everyone. To our Professor Tapajit Bhattacharya, the host of this event, to our principal sir, our heartfelt gratitude for his leadership, for his guidance. Many things are being possible these days in our college, which we couldn't think of even maybe a few years ago. We are very grateful to you, sir. Under your leadership, it's a pleasure to work with you as a leader of us. I'm happy that one of the research scholars of our college is delivering this important topic, important lecture on a very important topic. So I look forward to attending the lecture, whole lecture, to get into it. The day is worth celebrating. So I'm happy, I'm very privileged. I consider myself very privileged that I could attend this lecture. As our principals have very nicely explained, there are so many things to be done by us without much ado, without much preparation, without much expenditure. We can do a lot. So those things, if we can do little by little within our capacity, without depending on anyone else, if we continue doing that, eventually things will improve. They are bound to improve. This type of event, I am very pleased that Department of Conservation Biology, although it's quite a small department, but they are organizing very important, impactful seminars like this. And this is really going to help us, I'm sure, and going to make our institution proud, and it will be, I think it will be noticed by the people who matter in our academics, under NAC, UGC, etc., DBT. So on my behalf, I welcome our speaker this evening, all the participants, and our TCS is there. It's a matter of great pleasure that he is also attending it. So it implies that all of them are giving a lot of importance to this event, and very rightly so. Without anything more, I conclude here, again welcoming the speaker as well as all the participants of this event. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much for your encouraging words. Now, I would like to request Dr. Subhajit Ojha, Secretary Teachers Council, to express his feelings. Sir, please.
Thank you, Tabajit sir. Respected Principal sir, Durgapur Government College, our respected IQAC coordinator sir. So, on behalf of the Teachers Council, Durgapur Government College, I heartily welcome Shri Agni Mitra in this platform, and all the faculty members of Conservation Biology. Thank you for organizing such an excellent webinar, and all the participants present in this platform. I personally welcome you all, and we know that already IQAC coordinator sir, principal sir mentioned beautifully to the main objective of today's seminar, and without wasting much time, we all are eagerly waiting to listen our speaker's lecture. So welcome you and thank you all. I wish this seminar will be a great success. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your words. Now, this is the time to introduce our distinguished speaker, Shri Agni Mitra. Shri Agni Mitra is a distinguished conservation professional dedicated to the conservation of wildlife and the environment. Since September 2016, Shri Mitra has been serving as the Regional Deputy Director, Eastern Region for the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, WCCB, under the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, till August 2023. He led the operations in the Eastern Region, striving to reduce wildlife crime across 10 states through office in Kolkata and Guwahati. His role encompasses intelligence gathering, investigations, enforcement operations, capacity building, customs inspections, and conducting awareness programs. Prior to this, He held various significant positions within the Department of Forests, Andaman and Nicobar Administration, including Deputy Conservator of Forest Silviculture and Divisional Forest Officer Nicobar Division. Shri Mitra also contributed to the Terra-Arc Landscape Program as an Assistant Coordinator with the World Wide Fund for Nature WWF, India, and as a Junior Research Fellow at the Wildlife Institute of India. He joined Mizoram in September 2023 and currently posted as Field Director, Dampa Tiger Reserve since October 2023. Shri Mitra's excellence in his field is highlighted by the Gold Medal for all-round outstanding performance during the Indian Forest Service Training Course 2009-11 at Indira Gandhi National Forest Academy. He has been honored with 6 additional medals for various achievements during the same course and received a medal for the highest marks in the computer module at Lal Bahadur Shastri National Academy of Administration. He was the rank and medalist of Science Environment Management from the Forest Research Institute deemed University Dehradun. His efforts in Operation Kurma against illegal turtle trade earned him a certificate of appreciation from the Additional Director of the WCCB and recognition from the CITES Secretariat, Geneva. Shri Mitra has participated in several international workshops and training sessions, including sectoral level meetings between India and Asian region meeting of wild specialized training, crime control and detection techniques. Augustus case is marked by a commitment to and passion for wildlife conservation, making him a valuable asset to any organization aiming to make a positive impact on natural world. We are privileged to have you with us, sir. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bhattacharya, for kind words. Am I audible to everybody?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes,
No
sir.
Okay. Okay, thank you. So my internet connection is not very stable here. I'm at a remote location, but I suppose this should go uninterrupted. So thank you very much for having me, Durgapur Government College, and thank you, Dr. Bhattacharya, for your kind words. Let us begin with the presentation that I have at hand. Is it visible?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. So today's topic at hand is conservation issues in Northeast India and Dampa Tiger Reserve as a case study. On the title slide, I have put in a picture. It's a very grainy picture and shot in dark because of an infrared camera trap picture. And it is of the last tiger picture that has been shot in Dampa Tiger Reserve, and it was obtained in 16 May 2021. It is really significant because Dampa was not supposed to have tigers for a very long time, and this was quite an unexpected visit from this gentleman here. So I would come back to its context, and so this is a symbol of hope for Northeast, this picture, and the resilience of wildlife and tigers in this kind of landscapes. With that note, let us begin our talk today. In this presentation and talk today, we are going to talk about Dampa Tiger Reserve, its conservation values, and then we would look at the major conservation issues we have in Northeast India, and using Dampa landscape as an example of how intense these problems are and what can be the possible solutions. We would move on to the strategies to mitigate such issues, and we'll have some concluding notes. I invite all the listeners to kindly, pose your questions. You can stop me in between and you can ask, or you can write it down and we can have a question and answer session after my talk is done. And throughout this presentation, we are going to use some of the camera trap pictures from the camera traps in Dampa Tiger Reserve. And to begin with, here you have a clouded leopard, an infrared picture of the clouded leopard looking at you through our camera traps. So conservation values of Dampa Tiger Reserve, it is the core of Dampa Tiger Reserve is 445 square kilometers and with a buffer area of 443 square kilometers, and it is of course in the state of Mizoram. and it had an estimated tiger population which was inherently low because of factors which are beyond conservation efforts, which are inherent. The habitat here is too dense to be an ideal habitat for tigers, and the populations were already low. In 2006 there was an estimated population of 6, which kept on dwindling to 5, 3 and 0, although there is one picture in 2021. So there can be an argument that this is lack of conservation efforts, but my initial feeling in the last few months that it is not so. We will discuss further. Coming to conservation values of Dampa Tiger Reserve, there are published papers by researchers in which it has been seen that it has the highest recorded density of clouded leopards anywhere in the earth. And we can see that in our camera traps, almost all of the camera traps have clouded leopards. And this is an ecological phenomenon which is called mesopredator release. If there are lack of the top predators in an ecosystem like tigers and leopards, then the mesopredator, like the clouded leopard in this case, the populations will really go up. Beyond that, Dampa Tiger Reserve, if you count the tiger, has 7 cat species, which is almost unbelievable. I think only Namdafa of Arunachal would have a similar number of cat species. The tiger, the leopard, the clouded leopard, the golden cat, marble cat, leopard cat and jungle cat make up the 7 cat species that we have in Dampa. Also, we have 8 species of primates, including the western hullock gibbon and Fairey's leaf monkey. So the primate richness is also incredible. The extreme richness of Dampa comes into smaller carnivores. Beyond the small cats, we have 4 species of civets and 4 other species of small carnivores, like this spotted linson that has been captured in our camera traps, and this binturong. If you have heard of that species, it's a very rare species. It's a bear cat found in only the northeastern parts of India and parts of Southeast Asia, and also present in Dampa. The Malayan sun bear, which was once thought to be extinct from India, but regularly is camera trapped in Dampa Tiger Reserve. It is a small bear, just the size of a dog, maybe slightly more, and that is regularly captured in Dampa Tiger Reserve along with the Asiatic black bear. Beyond that, there are many interesting rare endangered species in Dampa, like the Chinese pangolin, Himalayan crestless porcupine, brush-tailed porcupine, giant squirrels, hog badger, ferret badger, etc. We also have some of the very rare morphs like the red sirau, which is also the state animal of Mizoram, and also we have the grey peacock pheasant and Kalich pheasants recorded in the camera traps. The Mizoram University, MZU, they are richly publishing papers with descriptions of new species of herpetofauna almost every year. Some of the examples of the camera trap images from Dampa: dhole, that is wild dog. We have a very large population of dhole, which is kind of a deterrent to tiger presence, by the way, but we do have a very large population of dhole. And along with that, we have leopard, we have the golden cat, and interestingly, melanistic versions of the golden cat is more prevalent in Dampa. We of course have the clouded leopard, we have the leopard cat, we have the marbled cat, Malayan sun bear, the yellow-throated martens, and a host of primates and other small carnivore species. Beyond that, the conservation values of Dampa is signified, is emphasized through some more facts here. And the inviolate core of 545 square kilometer, it is such that even in 1989, the forest officials of Mizoram had the great foresight of relocating villages from as many as 9 villages in 1989 to 1990 from the core of Dampa Tiger Reserve. It is wonderful because let me also say that it is easier in Mizoram because of the slash and burn agriculture, that is jhum agriculture and all. So the land tenure is already little flexible, but beyond that they had this great foresight of creating this inviolate core area of more than 500 square kilometer, which is now home to this incredible array of biodiversity. Beyond that, Mizoram is the southernmost state in Northeast India, and on the western side of Mizoram we have Bangladesh, in the eastern side of Mizoram we have Myanmar, and the forests in Mizoram, which is among the highest percentage in the country, 83% plus. It is in connectivity between the hills of Bangladesh, that is the Chittagong and the Kaselong Reserve forests, etc., and the protected areas of Assam, Manipur, etc., and on the eastern side, the forests of Myanmar. So in between these forest areas, Dampa, the very dense and protected forests of 500 square kilometers of Dampa, it really signifies a major source population for all these endangered wildlife. Also, within Mizoram, there is Thoratlang Wildlife Sanctuary, which is about 260 square kilometers, and it is also connected with Myanmar forests and also possible tiger habitat. Let me also say that the buffer zone of Dampa and generally the forested areas of Mizoram beyond the protected areas are also interspersed forests and fallows because of June, and there is recorded wildlife movement everywhere here. And the great thing about Mizoram is that the local inhabitants here, the Mizo tribes, the Chakma tribes and the Liang tribes, they do not have cattle in their villages. They only keep pigs, and in small sties. The pigs are not released outside of the sties, so there is zero grazing in the forests of Mizoram, and that is why the health of the forest is like what you are seeing in your picture. So this is from Mizoram. This is the buffer of Dampa actually, and you can look at the health of the forests here. Now coming to the conservation issues in northeastern India, there are many. First of all, we can talk about the issues which relate to wildlife crime. Firstly, there are species in northeastern India which commands very, very high value in the illegal markets. The rhinoceros for its horn, which is demanded in the Middle Eastern parts of Asia and also other parts of China and Southeastern Asian countries because of its supposed medicinal value, which medical research has not thrown up any significant active ingredient, but it is continuing as a belief system. So the rhinoceros horns, tiger body parts, every body part of the tiger, the pelt, the skeletons and other parts. Similarly for the leopard, turtle leopard pelt, ivory from elephant, the gallbladder from the bears, musk from musk deers from Arunachal and Sikkim, and the scales of the pangolin from almost all of the northeastern states. So these very high value species are there in northeast, which is a cause of concern. Beyond that, we have 5 international borders in northeast with high wildlife use countries, and 3 of those borders are officially open with free movement regime, that is Nepal, Bhutan and Myanmar. So of course the government of India is now considering closing the free movement regime with Myanmar because of smuggling and other insurgency issues, but as on date it is still open. So that of course breeds smuggling, and because the pull is from Southeastern Asia, China, etc. So the pull is from there, and we have free movement regime in Nepal, Bhutan, Myanmar, which are our buffers with China. So you can imagine the amount of smuggling which can happen through these countries. Beyond that, in Northeast, we have extremism. It is dwindling and dwindling quite sharply, but still it is there. And because of that, the availability of arms is much easier. And beyond that, we have illegal hunting for pot, which is for own consumption. Besides, the northeastern states are one of the poorly developed regions of India, and there is of course lack of infrastructure and resources, and the forest department of course is a reflection of that infrastructural crunch. And the staff, they are not exposed to modern techniques, not exposed to the skills which some of the more advanced forest departments have, so that capacity building is very much necessary. The locals, they have a lukewarm to antagonistic relationship with the forest departments because the incentives of revenue from forest producers or from ecotourism is hardly there. There is hardly ecotourism in northeastern states, barring a few pockets. In Assam, that too, mostly. So that incentive from the forest department is absent, and rather there is constant contest for the ownership of the land, which is the next issue, that in Northeast the tribes consider forests as their community owned land, and that is akin to their lifestyles and their cultural predominance. And so that is a constant point of conflict between the forest department and the tribes, which is of course the reason that this lukewarm relationship is not getting conservation ahead in these pockets. Of course, things are changing and we'll talk about that, but that has been an issue in northeastern India and still remains. Lastly, jhum burning, that is slash and burn agriculture, which clear fells a piece of land, does agriculture on that for 5-6 years and then again moves into a new pasture. Now, when the human population pressures were lower and people used to come back to the same jhum land after 25-30 years of a cycle, it was still sustainable. But with time, with increased medical care and access to medical facilities and all, the life expectancy is getting higher and higher, and the population densities are getting higher. This is getting unsustainable. I would say from my experience in Mizoram that it is not still as much as of a problem that it has become irreversible. It is still possible to reverse the land into forests and kind of horticultural forestry uses, which would still be amenable to wildlife movement, but it is increasingly a problem in Northeast. Now let us look at these issues one by one, and firstly the point regarding high value species that we have. So I have already talked about the high value species which we have in Northeast. And before I forget, let me say that this image that you have in the background is one of the golden cats, one of the numerous golden cats that we have in the Dampa Tiger Reserve, and it is an infrared photo of the night, camera trap photo, and this is one of the melanistic morphs that we have here. So like this golden cat, the very many high value species we have talked about in Northeast. Now, how to combat this special interest and pull from China, from Southeast Asian countries? Assam has shown the way with the Special Rhino Protection Force. In my tenure in the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, the 7 years from 2016 to 2020-23 was very, very telling. And I would say the average number of rhinos post when I had joined WCCB, that is in 2016, was about 25 rhinos a year in Assam. That came down to 15-16, that came down to 7-8, and that came down to 0 and 1 in my concluding years, that is 2022-2023. And how was this possible? This was possible because the number of poachers shot dead by that Special Rhino Protection Force in Kaziranga was every year more than the number of rhinos shot dead by poachers. Now, this is an extreme case and this is an extreme measure. You cannot shoot people down everywhere in the country, but in Kaziranga it is possible for the continued political commitment that Assam enjoys for its rhinos. Rather, I would say rhinos enjoys in Assam, and because of that, whatsoever may be the government, the rhino protection has been a priority, and it has dwindled over time. So there is basically what can be called as a shoot at sight order in Kaziranga, and that has been the result of such wonderful protection. But that is something which is not possible everywhere, and it is not warranted everywhere. Assam, Kaziranga is of course a warlike zone where the poachers also carry automatic weapons to defend themselves, and of course because of that the Rhino Protection Force also has to carry automatic weapons, and if you encounter each other in the night, then there is no exchange of words, there is only exchange of fire. In such a situation you will have to carry firearms and there will be casualties, and thankfully the protection force, there has not been significant casualties, but only on the other side. Now in Dampa we have something called wildlife guards. They are contractual guards mostly, and they are funded by the National Tiger Conservation Authority. So here also I want to say that the role of a tiger as an umbrella species is emphasized, that even though the tiger sightings and the records of tigers in Dampa is few and far between, but the incredible richness of Dampa having the 6 other cat species and numerous other rare and endangered species. They are protected by the funds provided by the Tiger Conservation Authority. So the role of the tiger as an umbrella species is very much significant and very much underlined here in Dampa. Beyond that, the smuggling of these high-value species outside of Northeast and outside of Indian borders, this can be achieved by sensitization of the enforcement agencies. Our borders in the Northeast are guarded by different enforcement agencies, like we have Assam Rifles in the Myanmar border, we have BSF in Bangladesh border, we have SSB in Nepal and Bhutan border, and we have the CRPF along the roads, nakas, important establishments, etc. And of course, we have the state police of the different states also working in tandem with these enforcement agencies. Now, if these enforcement agencies are sensitized that how the wildlife products look like say for example pangolin scale, many of the enforcement agencies personnel, they have not seen pangolin scales. From my experience with the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, we had conducted numerous sensitization sessions with these enforcement agencies, border guarding agencies, and they now know, many of them now know how the pangolin scales look like, how the rhino horn can look like, how to differentiate in the field, a primary exercise, a thumb rule to differentiate between fake and real rhino horns, fake and real tiger skins, and so on and so forth. So sensitization of such enforcement agencies would go a long way and is going a long way in stopping smuggling of our high value species outside of Indian borders. Let me also say that there is this peculiar problem of incoming exotic species in the northeastern states since 2020. And this is because there has been a amendment in the Wildlife Protection Act in which ultimately took effect in April 2023. And it was regarding the exotic species which is listed in the CITES, the Convention on International Trade on Endangered Species of Fauna and Flora. India is a signatory since 1976, if I'm not mistaken. And because of that, there was a gap in legislation in Indian laws that the exotic species in CITES, which are protected in other countries, let's say the rare macaws of Brazil or the birds of paradise from Indonesia, they had no protection in India. It can be openly sold and openly purchased and kept. So that gap has been plugged by this amendment, and now to keep, to breed, to sell these exotic CITES listed species, there are permits required, and to trade there are separate permits required. And so there is this now regulated trade of CITES species instead of open trade within India, and the gap has been filled to a large extent. So because of that, there was initial notifications since August 2019 that declaration of stock should be there, and the initial 1 or 2 extensions of that deadline, they said that there is no documents required for source of those stocks. So because of that, there was rampant smuggling in of exotic species for declaring them as legal stock. Many of them would know that there were kangaroos found in North Bengal, and there was there are dozens of macaw which was seized in North Bengal. Now they are in the Rasikville Zoo, etc. So those phenomena were because of this huge amount of incoming stock from basically the farms are in Thailand, these animal breeding farms. So from Thailand, crossing the territory of Myanmar, these were entering India through Mizoram border, through Manipur border, and coming into India for being declared as legal stock. So that was a peculiar problem, along with the inherent problem of Indian wildlife products going out of Indian waters. So it is the continuation of the same issue that the open borders which we have with Nepal, Bhutan and Myanmar, and the porous borders which we have with Bangladesh and China. So either open or porous international borders and the free movement regime along the Myanmar, Nepal, Bhutan borders, similar ethnicity, the same tribes living on both sides of the border, same languages being spoken by the tribes on both sides of the border. And by the way, this also applies for Mizoram, Bangladesh border, because we have the Chakma tribes and Bru and Mizo tribes also living on both sides of the border in the hill tracts of Bangladesh. and it is very difficult to differentiate between the tribes living in India and Bangladesh. There is no difference basically, and so there is movement of goods and movement of people along these porous borders. We have talked about the flow towards China and Southeast Asia. We have also talked about the sensitized border guarding forces. So we have highlighted this huge conservation issue in Northeast India, that is open or porous international borders. In the background, you're seeing the crab-eating mongoose. The white-necked mongoose, which is also one of the rare species in Dampa Tiger Reserve. Extremism and arms. This is something of a problem in northeastern India. So the nexus of extremism and especially rhino horn smuggling, among other things, are very well established. There has been rhino poachers and smugglers who have been arrested, who have also been known to be associated with insurgent groups. There is a known mechanism of barter between wildlife goods and arms. So the smugglers and the insurgent groups within India, they would hand over rhino horns to Myanmar-based groups, and the Myanmar-based groups would hand over arms, etc. And this would fund the insurgent activities within India. And especially the cases of Manas during the Bodo movement, that has been the case. Ivory was the mainstay there, along with rhino horn, definitely. And in eastern part of Assam and all, it has been rhino horn, tiger body parts, etc., pangolin scales, bartered for arms and all, and that has been recorded. So it's a clear case of national security threat, and I'm afraid it has not garnered as much as enforcement attention as it should have from the national agencies. Coming to Dampa Tiger Reserve, to put this into the context of Dampa, I just talked about western boundary of Dampa Tiger Reserve with Bangladesh, which is having the Chakma, the Bru tribes. Now, they also have insurgent groups like the NLFT, which is, I think, the National Liberation Front of Tripura, and there is Bru, BNLF, Bru National Liberation Front, I think. Bru and Riang is the same tribe. So those activities are still there. In 2014, some of the forest staff of Dampa camping inside in the anti-poaching camps were kidnapped, and there was a undeclared ransom paid. And even after I joined, as recently as December 2023, there was movement in the border areas, because the BSF, the Border Security Force, they are building some border security outposts there, and the border security road is being built along the border of Dampa. And there was insurgent movements, I suppose, in opposition of that. And I was advised not to visit the border area for over a month. So that problem is there, but because of that, BSF now has very heavy presence, armed presence along the Bangladesh border, and now it is fully secured. And once the outposts are there, I think there would not be any cause of concern thereafter. Although not as much as a problem as organized smuggling of wildlife body parts, but illegal hunting for pot, that is for own consumption, it is a cultural issue in northeastern India. Be it the tribes of Arunachal, Nagaland, Mizoram, the like, there has been this culture of hunting, which is also linked to some of their festivals and rituals and all that. So it is a cultural issue and has been a cultural issue in Northeast. However, in my tenure in Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, I have seen a sea change in the perception of hunting as a pastime, as a permissible activity. So especially the case of Nagaland, I would say, because of the effort of many very hardworking and dedicated forest officers, there was huge shift in the perception of people from a socially acceptable activity, hunting, to an activity which people largely accepted as unacceptable and as a crime. There was sensitization of judiciary, there was sensitization of the administration, of police forces, and of course the common public there. And in the 7 years I was in WCCB, I had seen it from almost open hunting and open display of wildlife body parts in the wet markets of Dimapur, etc., to a point where there was no more any wildlife articles found in the wet markets of Dimapur of Nagaland or Chudachandpur of Manipur, Senapati markets. These were notorious at times for animal body parts, but it was with time this was much less, and there was general acceptance of the fact that this is a crime, this is not permissible, and there can be consequences of hunting. I'm not saying that we have reached a level where there is no hunting for pot, but there is a perceptible shift in recent times, that is for sure. In the case of Dampa Tiger Reserve, I would say that when I was posted in October 2023, when I used to move around in my vehicle, I used to see people carrying guns, and some of them were caught, some of them escaped, and sometimes wildlife case is not possible because they did not have any wildlife articles with them. It was just a gun, and they were outside of the reserve, the core area of the reserve. They were on the roads, but still there are cases possible in the Arms Act to be done by the police. So we invoked the police, and police said that there is an Arms Act case because the licenses were in different names and the carriers were different, which is not allowed. And because of that, there were a couple of arrests, and a couple of people had to spend a very long time in custody, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And like magic, January onwards, I do not see any more guns in the roads. So the news, it is astonishing how fast it travels, that so-and-so has been caught with a gun without any wildlife article, but still is spending time in jail, few weeks. So that has been a deterrent enough that moving around the Dampa Tiger Reserve now, I don't see any guns anymore. I'm not saying that people are not carrying it, but the levels have gone down significantly. And the first step in enforcement is, of course, that you do not allow it to be violated openly. That is the first step. And then, of course, you go on and on and on to eradicate it as far as possible. So that is also a perception that I have here in the Dampa Tiger Reserve. Lack of resources, of course, as I said, the development mandate is yet to be fulfilled in the northeastern states. It is one of the most poor in infrastructure, the northeastern states, and of course it reflects in the forest department also. Despite having the highest percentage of forest cover in the country, Mizoram Forest Department really lacks in resources in terms of even vehicles, buildings, funds for carrying out developmental activities and all that. So in the Dampa Tiger Reserve, for example, there is hardly any road. I mean, I would say 95% of the core area of the Tiger Reserve is not accessible. And remember, there were roads because villages were there, although I must say some of the villages were just connected by foot trails. They were not roads. But there were some villages which had roads, and those roads have fallen into disuse, and there's a huge chunk of area which is not accessible by roads. The BSF is now building a road alongside the western, the western boundary of Dampa Tiger Reserve, and although as on date it is a disturbance because the road is being built now, but once it is built and we will just have a few BSF outposts along the 62-kilometer long border that Dampa has with Bangladesh. We will have 5 BSF outposts in that range, but that road will give us a lot of accessibility through the streams into the insides of Dampa. It is already accessible, that road. It is already motorable, although not finished, and it is giving us increased accessibility from western side into the heart of Dampa, and from eastern side we do have one road which is going around the eastern border of Dampa, so we would have much better accessibility. We have already taken some initiatives to get some access into some of our anti-poaching camps and some of our old watchtowers, which would then give larger access to the inside areas of Dampa, the heart of Dampa, which has not been really monitored for some time now. So this is the case of many protected areas in Northeast. Dampa, this lack of infrastructure and resources fund, it typifies many of the Tiger Reserve protected areas of Northeast, and we can look at Northeast through the lens of Dampa as the purpose of this talk today. And so if you go to Arunachal, Nagaland, so while the areas are extraordinarily rich in biodiversity, there would be this lack of resources. The staff in these areas also are not really exposed to the modern techniques of animal monitoring, wildlife monitoring. The camera trapping here that we are having is also the result of last few months. There has been camera trapping and also sample collections beyond the last few months, but those have been ad hoc mostly. There has not been systematic exploration, and only there has been some outside research. So the staff is really in need of some capacity building, and this is not only the case of Dampa Tiger Reserve or Mizoram Forest Department, it is the case across Northeast India. Assam, of course, is an exception because they lay a premium on the rhino, and because of that, Assam is quite far ahead than the other states of Northeast in this category, in this matter. So what can be the possible solutions for such situation? So my short stay in Dampa tells me that there can be CSR options. So I have been in talk with some of the large NGOs like WWF. They have been able to get CSR options. They are in touch with donors. They are in touch with Indian bodies of commerce which are willing to help, and they can really help and give us infrastructure. Like we are going to receive a vehicle very shortly from WWF India, which they have got from CSR, and we are going to receive 50 camera traps. We are also going to receive some 25 mobile phones, which would be used for some apps. It is called M-Stripes, the apps. It is mandated by the National Tiger Conservation Authority to record animal signs, to record the locations of human disturbances and all that, and then it is automatically collated into geographical information systems and to produce reports and maps, etc. So to implement that, we need mobile phones, even if we don't have connections, mobile connectivity within the Tiger Reserve. So the WWF is giving us that. We are in talk to provide health insurance to some of our contractual workers, and that would also be a CSR activity. So these kind of options exist. Some of them are willing to make some of our NTFP huts, which are being used as anti-poaching camps, into permanent structures. So CSR options do exist if we can approach the correct donors for this. Beyond that, I also feel that there is a need for preferential treatment by National Tiger Conservation Authority. There is need for preferential treatment by other centrally sponsored schemes and central sector schemes, like the Integrated Development of Wildlife Habitats by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, Government of India. And without preferential treatment, this kind of the states and the tiger reserves which are lagging behind, they cannot be really put together in the same pedestal along with the more intensively managed tiger reserves. Relationship with locals, and it is something which is entwined with the ownership of issue of the forest land, as we have already discussed, that the tribes in northeastern India, they rightly, I would say, believe that the segments of that forest is for their own bona fide use. And so, especially in Arunachal, I think this problem is acute. The forest department lays claim over tracts of land which is also laid claim by the tribes of those areas, and so there is a tense situation with the locals. Our participants might not know that there are tiger sightings and camera trap pictures of tigers near China border in the Anini district of Arunachal Pradesh. It is one of the remotest districts of the country, and in such altitudes, 3000 meter plus, there has been found a population of tigers which is pretty dense population of tigers. I think they have found about 15 tigers in an area of 250 square kilometer camera trapping, along with other rare species such as golden cat and leopards, cloud leopards, etc. But the local population is so opposed to declaring a tiger reserve that it has not been possible, even after 2 years of effort, to make declarations for the tiger reserve, because they think that the land will be taken by the forest department if there is a declaration of tiger reserve. So they just don't want to come into any dialogue. Even the efforts of WCCB for conducting awareness programs there were heavily opposed to an extent that it could not be conducted, and so on and so forth. So this antagonism is there in many parts of Northeast, where the ownership of the land is in question by the local community. In Mizoram, thankfully, the ownership of the land is quite defined. The forest areas are quite well defined. That is in the control of the forest department. There are vast amounts of forest outside of that that boundary that is controlled by the village councils and all, and there is sometimes clear felling, jhum, etc. in those areas, and that is a concern, as I have highlighted, and we are going to discuss in jhum agriculture, which is the next point. But the forest boundaries, which is well demarcated in Mizoram, is a boon, and inside that it is largely perceived that you cannot cut trees or do anything inside those areas, and at least that is quite protected in Mizoram. I've discussed about jhum agriculture. It is on land which is perceived to be under the community's control, and we have discussed about how this can be detrimental. However, what I see in Mizoram, that although the population densities of humans have increased over the last few decades, but still it is in a situation that we still have secondary forest bamboo breaks on lands which has been kept fallow for 5-6 years, and it is amenable for use by wildlife. There are signs of clouded leopard pug marks, there are signs of the deers, barking deer, sambar pug marks, hoof marks there. And so these secondary fallows are also used by wildlife to an extent, and they are not green deserts, so to speak, the jhum fallows, which are not being used as jhum. So Mizoram still has low human densities outside of the cities of Aizawl and a few other cities. So it is possible, but I think with time, this will not be sustainable, and we have to shift to something else. So the possible solutions to these problems, which are interconnected, to my mind, one is ecotourism. Northeast still is relatively poor in terms of ecotourism. Of course, we have a lot of tourism in Kaziranga. We have a lot of tourism. We have significant tourism, maybe not a lot, in Manas Tiger Reserve. But beyond that, there is some faint interest in Arunachal, in the cold deserts of Arunachal. But beyond that, I would say the rest of Northeast is almost untouched. In the last few years, especially after COVID, and because of social media, there has been this surge to explore so-called offbeat destinations, and because of that, places like Zoku Valley in Nagaland and some of the really scenic places in Mizoram have come into some kind of focus. I would not say actual focus, but some kind of focus. But of course, there is not much tourism beyond that. So the larger areas of Northeast still remains unexplored, which can really offer excellent tourist experiences in terms of biodiversity, in terms of nature tourism, and also in terms of cultural experiences. So the only good example that we have in front of us is the Hornbill Festival by Nagaland. So the Hornbill Festival, now it is split into, I think, few towns, Dimapur, Kohima, etc. And the music festival, combined with the showcase of tribal culture, their food, the foods of the different tribes in Nagaland, their attires, the implements used by them, which is also for sale. And there is this, for a small state like Nagaland, there is a sizable population of tourists coming from all over India, and then they are contributing to the local economy in a very positive way. So this is possible for the rest of Northeast, and this is possible definitely for Mizoram, for Dampa Tiger Reserve. Being a tiger reserve, it has next to nil tourism. So I think it is possible that ecotourism can be a provider. And once people link ecotourism to income, and link ecotourism on the other hand to wildlife, so they would know that ecotourism is there because of the wildlife presence. At least bird watchers, etc., they can come, like it is happening in the eagle nest sanctuary for the Bugun Leochitla, the newly described bird for the Bugun tribe, and so it can happen for the other tribes in other areas of Northeast. So ecotourism can be a great provider, and that is the I think the best way to go ahead. So the people get income which is dependent upon wildlife. So they would always be a constituency for wildlife conservation here. Regarding the ownership of forest land, there has been a marvelous solution which has come out of Nagaland in the last few years, and that is community reserves. Some of us might not be aware. So community reserve is a class of protected area which has now been introduced in the Wildlife Protection Act, I think in the past 10 years about. So in the community reserves, the ownership of the land is with the community or with specific individuals. And generally these are next to wildlife sanctuaries or national parks, next to protected areas, and also harbors rich wildlife and has tourism potential. And so the community reserves are managed by the community for tourism gains. And also in the case of Nagaland, the driving factor was that the central government funds. So in the Integrated Development of Wildlife Habitat centrally sponsored scheme, the Government of India has provided funds for upkeep of these community reserves by employment of guards, by small initiatives of water conservation measures, which not only benefits the community reserve but also the tribal community which derives water, etc., from that areas. So it is a win-win for the community as well as for the wildlife. So that has been the reason that Nagaland has shot up from nil community reserves, I think around 2002, to about 100 community reserves around 2012. And the area also is now, I think, more than 1,000 square kilometer, if I remember correctly, under community reserves in Nagaland because of this incentive from Government of India. Now, there are efforts afoot in Mizoram and in other states of Northeast to put an end to Jhum agriculture and to settle people onto certain lands, because Jhum agriculture, by its very nature, it demands that people are displaced every few years. So they have to live near their Jhum lands and they have to take everything along. So this is not conducive for economic growth, for better lifestyles for people. And so there is an effort by the government to settle people and to move them towards horticultural crops. It can be betel nut, it can be fruits like mangoes or jackfruit, etc. So there has been an effort to try and settle them into remunerative horticulture / forestry, so that they are not anymore practicing Jhum. So there is something called the SALT, which is the sloped, I think, agricultural land technology. Sorry, sloped land agricultural technology. So it is applicable for places which has more than, I think, 15 degree of slope, something like that. And it talks about having bunches of plants along with leguminous plants to increase nitrogen content of the soil, and also plants which has binding roots like the pineapple, etc. So this crop along with leguminous crop in rows would preserve the soil and increase its nitrogen content, which can then be used, the intermittent area then can be used for other crops or tree crops, etc. So there is a technology for that, and it is being propagated in Mizoram in a different avatar. It is called the Mizoram salt, so me salt. So, and I hope that with time this is adopted by more and more farmers, and the area under Jhum is lessened. Let us hope that happens. So coming to the concluding remarks, let me also summarize a little bit. So we have talked about the conservation values of Dampa Tiger Reserve, which is incredible in terms of feline diversity, incredible in terms of primate diversity, incredible in terms of small carnivore diversity, and also very, very important link between the forests of Bangladesh, Myanmar, Assam, and together with these other protected areas and reserve forest forms the northeastern hill landscape. It is of course one of the biodiversity hotspots of the world. So the problems faced by Northeast is also typified by Dampa. We have talked about wildlife crime because of the very high value species present. We have talked about porous borders with free movement regime. We have talked about the smuggling happening through that outside of India and also exotics coming into India. We have talked about the hunting for pot, and we have talked about Zoomland agriculture. We have talked about the relationship with locals, the usage of guns, extremism, and what can be the possible solutions for these, and what has been the solutions in some parts of Northeast, and then those best practices which can be replicated elsewhere. So in conclusion, I must say that there is a clear silver lining to the clouds that we have over Northeast now, and in my few months of direct involvement with Mizoram State Forest Department, and in my 7 years of involvement in the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau with the Northeastern states, I would say that there is clear indication that Northeast, as far as wildlife is concerned and wildlife conservation is concerned, it is on the verge of change. The perceptions of wildlife from a resource for the pot to something which has to be conserved is changing very rapidly. There are NGOs locally coming up, civil society organizations locally coming up who are championing the cause of conservation. They are going door to door for awareness. They are seeking to partner with the forest department for this awareness campaigns and all. And because of that, I think there is a change. And also the law enforcement agencies, their perception, their sensitivity towards wildlife crime, it has really changed in the last few years. So I think Northeast, as far as wildlife conservation is concerned, is really on the verge of a change. And the next 5, 7, 10 years, we would see much better levels of wildlife conservation than we have seen in the past few decades. And I think ecotourism is going to play a big part in that. I can say with confidence that most parts of Northeast are totally safe for tourists to travel. Mizoram has been one of the most safest and the most peaceful states in Northeast since the 80s. Arunachal, of course, there is no problem at all. Nagaland, there is no problem at all. Manipur, we are having a situation for the last 1-2 years. Before that, they were perfectly peaceful state for about 5-6 years. I have been to Manipur. I've even crossed from Manipur into Myanmar during my time there in WCCB. So my perception is that Manipur is also going to come around very soon, and other parts of Northeast, I think there is hardly any problem at all for visit, and it is still very lush, very verdant, very pristine, and often Northeast is portrayed as green desert. I don't think it is so. My perception in Mizoram is that that is not so. There is still hope, and there is a large amount of species still present in the forests of Northeast, and with the winds changing, they can really come into the fore and occupy larger and larger part of Northeastern forests. So that was my concluding remarks. I really thank you for your patient hearing, and I would now welcome comments and queries and clarifications from any of the participants. Thank you again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for enriching us with your first-hand knowledge of the biodiversity hotspot. Now it is open for the questions. If anyone has any question, please ask, sir. You can ask it here.
Hello. Hello. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You are audible.
Yes, I can hear you.
Yeah. I have a little question rather a discussion. rather than a question actually. So as far as I know, this tiger, I'm focusing on the tiger thing only, and that if I go back thousands of years back, so I consider that the tiger came from the southeast China or South China, and it traveled through India from the Himalaya, and mainly they have entered the India from the northeastern part of our country, right? And they have spread it in our subcontinents. Now, if they have came from the northeast part, I believe that long back there was a greater population of this tiger in the northeast, including Mizoram. Am I not wrong? So still we can find the maximum population in Assam, in Nepal, Bhutan, in few parts of Arunachal also. But what happened to the Mizoram? Means why they have vanished altogether from the Mizoram? What is the reason actually? That would be one of my questions to you, sir.
Okay. So certainly they have been ousted by more and more habitat being converted into jhum and occupied by people. And but the thing we must understand is that the habitat in Arunachal, Mizoram, it is not ideal tiger habitat. Before my joining of the Indian Forest Service, I was a research fellow at the Wildlife Institute of India, and I have worked on tigers in Kanha and Corbett National Parks, and I have camera trapped tigers and walked the forests, etc. So for tigers to have high density of tigers, what you need is a forest grassland mosaic with water. Okay, so the grasslands support high densities of grazing prey like cheetal, and the forest would give cover and also have the browsing prey like sambar, wild boar, etc., and also cover for the tiger. So if water is available along with this grassland forest mosaic, that is the ideal condition for having tiger population, a high density of tiger populations. And the central Indian parks like Kanha, Bandhavgarh and all, they have this very high density almost to an artificial level. That is because there has been relocated villages out of Kanha, out of Bandhavgarh and all, and those relocated village sites have very high density of grass on which the cheetahs graze, and the forest departments actively maintain those meadows. They uproot any trees in those which has come in those meadows. So that is almost an artificial level of tigers that we have in central India. Coming to natural densities, the highest recorded densities of tiger we have in the Terai region. So we have some tiger reserves in the Terai region, like starting from Corbett in Uttarakhand to up to Kaziranga in Assam. Kaziranga is not exactly in the Terai, but the habitat is similar. So I would say Valmiki in Bihar, these are the Terai tiger reserves that we have. And in between in UP, we have the Pilibhit, we have Dudhwa, Suhelwa, Sohagi Barwa, etc. So all these are now tiger habitats, very good tiger habitats with lots of tigers. In Nepal side, we have Chetwan, we have Parsa, I think, in Nepal side, so on and so forth. So the Terai tiger reserves have the highest density of tigers. In Corbett, there is an incredible density of, I think, almost 20 tigers per 100 square kilometers. Similarly, in Kaziranga, the tiger densities are 15 tigers plus per 100 square kilometers. Because it is grassland, it is forest, there is water, this mosaic supports very high tiger density. Mizoram, on the other hand, it is basically geographically the Lushai Hills. It is steep hills, the hills running from north to south, interspersed with some valleys, but thickly forested originally. So even in the ancient times, Mizoram would have had certainly a high number of tigers, but would never have the amount of tigers, the density of tigers which Assam would have had. So it was much easier for a low density population to go for having got extirpated than like the tigers of Assam and the likes. So Mizoram can now even tigers come into Mizoram. Even a few weeks back in January, we have had a tiger record of vocalization, tiger roars heard by a couple of persons, villagers. And from the description, it is definitely a tiger roar. We scouted the area for it was from his description, and he has not seen a tiger or never heard a tiger before that. It was a tiger road. So tigers do come, and this place is not very far from Kaziranga landscape. And when we have floods in Kaziranga, the tigers move southward into Karbi Anglong district, and from Karbi Anglong, north of Mizoram is not very far. So tigers come and go into Mizoram, and as I said, with conservation efforts, tigers will recolonize these areas. We have seen in many parts of India in the past decade, tigers have naturally recolonized. Tigers have come into areas which they have not come in the past 60 or 70 years. And our southern Bengal, the areas of Jhargram, Midnapur being one of them, the presence of tigers, the Lalgarh tigers which was killed by the villagers, and beyond that there have been tiger signs. Tigers have not been in that area in the past 60, 70 years. It is because of good conservation efforts in the source populations and also protection measures by the various state forest departments. So tigers were, to sum up my answer to your question, I think tigers were inherently low in Mizoram and extirpated because of the human domination with time. But all is not lost. Tigers have keep on coming here, and I think with more conservation focus and effort, I think we will have again a thriving tiger population in Mizoram. That is possible.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
May I just ask one or two questions? Yes, I have been to Dalma Hills. I have been to, not the core reserve area, but just outskirt of that in the Sundarbans. And what worries me is the concentration of human habitats, even in such areas. The felling of trees, the making of new agricultural land, these things are going on. So privacy of the wildlife, they are lost, and their security is also lost to a great extent. I believe you are all aware about that. Now, relocating and relocating of villages or stopping of human interference in important areas, where should we draw the boundary, the balance, particularly in areas which are international border with our country? So requirement of human population in the border areas is helpful for the safety of a country. So there is an effort to probably to encourage people to go and build their homes, villages like that nearer the border areas. Of course, after obeying the international commitments between the neighboring countries. So sometimes I wonder what would be the best compromise solution in such cases. Like Mizoram is a border state, like many of the important forests are in border states. So that sometimes worries me, or that question comes to my mind.
Right, Dr. Ghosh, that's an excellent question. So let me respond to it at through different in different aspects. So first of all, this question of competing human needs and wildlife conservation needs that we see around protected areas, a lot of human habitations and all, and so what can be the best compromise to also fulfill the aspirations of people and also have wildlife conservation. So towards this end, this concept of core and buffer has come into the National Tiger Conservation Authority, and also now it is used for all of the national parks and wildlife sanctuaries that we have. So the concept is that we have a core inviolate area for the wildlife conservation. It is called the core zone, and beyond that we would have a buffer zone with some forestry activity, some forestry areas with some habitat, and where some industries and polluting activities will not be permitted, but it will be open for agriculture, for gardens, for villages, etc., forestry, horticultural activities, etc., so that there can be some use by the wildlife. So it is kind of a coexistence agenda in the buffer and the inviolate zone in the core. So what this has helped, especially in the case of tigers, is that tigers are territorial animals, and the densities in Corbett and Kaziranga are exceptional, like 10 to 20 tigers per 100 square kilometer. But normally tiger densities for most of the tiger zone for Anthera tigris, which is our Royal Bengal tiger, is about 3 to 5 individuals per 100 square kilometer. That is a fair amount of tigers. Now, for that, a population of 40 to 50 tigers is considered a stable population, which is not going to go into genetic bottlenecks, which is not going to go into inbreeding problems. So a 40 to 50 tigers, if it is 3 to 5 tigers per 100 square kilometers, you can do the math. It would require 800 to 1000 square kilometer of area. Sometimes this is not available in a chunk. So the idea is to have interspersed cores, maybe 200 to 400 square kilometers each, and with buffers and corridors in between, which also would have human usage, can also permit animals to pass through, so that genetic exchange, etc., is there. And so this population of different national parks or tiger reserve in a large landscape is maintained what is called as a meta-population. Okay, so this meta-population would have genetic exchange in between them, and it will sustain this whole large population because of genetic exchange and all that. This whole large population will be more than 40 to 50 individuals, but individually these may be vulnerable for local extinction. So this is the kind of compromise that has been arrived at, core and buffer concept, in which the core is inviolate and the buffer has a coexistence of human and wildlife. And so that is how this is being processed. Now, as far as international borders are concerned, I don't think it has been the policy anymore in the recent decade or so to encourage people to go and settle in the borders, and especially in the northeastern states where the border is generally inhospitable. It is very difficult terrain in most of these borders. So the border is being secured by the different agencies that I have named. In Myanmar border, we have Assam Rifles. In Bangladesh and Pakistan border, we have BSF. In Bhutan and Nepal border, we have SSB. In China border, we have ITBP. Now, they are trying to secure our borders, and there are protected areas which are cross-border, like the Sundarbans. We have 1/3 in India, 2/3 in Bangladesh, like Valmiki in Bihar and Chitwan in Nepal. And then we also have Manas in Assam and Royal Manas in Bhutan. So these are cross-border protected areas, and animals are allowed free movement, like Sundarbans, Manas, etc. Animals are free moved, and often these areas, they do have meetings with their counterparts of the other countries. They do have joint enumeration of tigers, elephants, etc. So the tigers are not double counted. There is a fair amount of synergy, and there is fair amount of rapport between the neighboring countries and the neighboring protected areas to ensure similar levels of protection and coordinated protection on both sides. It is there in most states. Kind of unfortunate for Dampa, the tiger reserve, the core of the tiger reserve ends at the Bangladesh border. Other side of the border, we can see very good forests, but that is only a reserve forest, Kasalong Reserve Forest, and there are many villages also there, interspersed, but there is no protected area on the other side of Bangladesh. So if it was there, like the Bangladesh Sundarbans, we could also have cross-border joint patrolling, joint coordinated protection efforts and the like. So I hope this clarifies some of your questions.
Yes, thank you. Now it raises also some small questions, like say the point that you have mentioned in place like Dampa Reserve Forest, the road infrastructure is very poor, which is a big hindrance to the forest officials and forest guards to do their job. Now, do you think of any alternative which would be less costly than making roads and providing vehicles, like helicopter or something like that, aerial monitoring, something like that? Have you thought about that? I'm not people are there who are at the top level of planning. They are also thinking, but is it possible? And then probably the drone technology is coming up. If that can be used very effectively to monitor and protect the wildlife, particularly the big cats like the tigers and other things. That is one part. The other is that is one aspect of my question. The other is if you, this is a very hypothetical, but okay, I'm okay. I'm very keen to see that the wildlife is protected, the forest percentage, forest cover in a country, in our country particularly, gets increased to the level which international bodies are recommending, like that. In Bhutan, for instance, the forest cover is excellent. Their carbon surplus. That term I'm forgetting. They are producing less carbon dioxide or less such things in their atmosphere in the Bhutan. But
carbon negative.
Yes, but that is not the case in our country. So if you are given the responsibility and all the resources to devise some way how to do that in relatively short time, what would you recommend?
Right.
Okay. We want to achieve the purpose. Okay. So what would be?
Yes. Yeah. Very interesting questions indeed. So the first part of your question was regarding use of drones, etc. Would that be less costly than building roads and infrastructure and all that? Yes, that would be less costly, and the use of technology in wildlife monitoring protection is very much there, and new avenues are being explored every day. So the Wildlife Institute of India, which is the premier scientific organization regarding wildlife research in India, they have already formulated a drone policy for use in protected areas. And they have specified what kind of drones, because some of them are fixed wings, some of them are rotating wings, and which type can be used for what kind of use and all. They have given a very thorough so they have conducted research and field experiments, and they have given guidelines that this kind of drones can be used for these purposes and that can be used for those purposes, etc. However, these technologies also have limitations. First of all, in a very highly undulating terrain, thickly forested terrains like Dampa Tiger Reserve, like most of Northeast, the chances of these technologies being highly effective is low. What we need to do is to put this technology in conjuncture with foot patrolling and traditional and conventional methods of forest protection. When we were in training, one phrase which used to be told again and again and again is that the best fertilizer, you can say, for the forest trees is the foot of the forester. The footprints of the forester, if it is there in the forest will grow well and will be well protected. So till date, with AI, with the drones and all that stuff, still the foot of the forester is not replaceable. We need protection on the ground, and the foot of the forester will reach deeper if we have a roadhead till some point, and so that is necessary. Of course, we can complement that with technology, and the norms are being finalized. Some guidelines are there. Yes. So my answer would be that we need a mix of that. We need roads. We also need drones, and the judicious use of both would be case specific for each area. For areas which are largely grasslands and open, like Kaziranga, parts of Govt and all, more technology can be used. They have something called the electronic eye in Kaziranga, in Sarisk and Govt. So these can keep, these are cameras mounted very high up, if I remember correctly, 85 meters up. And they are very high resolution cameras. They can monitor all around. They can monitor by infrared in the darkness, and they can inform by alerts, in the form of alerts, if there is anything untoward that the cameras are catching. So that is possible, but that is possible because those are large open expanses of grasslands. if it is undulating, the line of sight will be obstructed and it would not be very effective over large amount of areas. Similarly, for a flying vehicle, if there are ridges and furrows all over, then the area it is covering would be much less, and the coverage would be much less thorough than an open plain which can be covered by aerial vehicles. So yes, a mix of technology and traditional methods is what I think is now in order, and most of the forest departments are trying to achieve that. And the next part of your question is that if I was given all the resources, what I would recommend. So let me tell you that we are witnessing a revolution, and many of us might not realize that. And that revolution is the use of solar electricity and solar power. So the government, I don't know if if the increased price of petrol and gasoline products was a push, maybe it was. The pull was the subsidized solar electricity. So subsidized solar electricity, and now new schemes both from the center and the state governments regarding rooftop installations of solar electricity, on-grid solar electricity, which would for a house, for a two-story house, the roof of it is almost capable of providing all of the electricity, and there is a 50% subsidy on that. So basically your electricity bill would be free if you pay an amount roughly about 75 to 80,000 rupees. So that is incredible. And so these kind of things, and if you look at the cars, the rate at which the electronic cars technology is improving, be it four-wheelers or be it two-wheelers, we are having SUVs being launched by Indian companies, electronic SUVs. Very, very shortly, Mahindra is going to launch one. So once we have that, this electronic vehicles, and of course then electronic, and also let me also mention that the major hindrance here is the batteries and the capacity of the batteries. So now we have this groundbreaking technology, which is very, very recent, which is the sodium ion technology instead of the lithium ion, which we conventionally use. So if it fulfills its promise, the sodium ion batteries, then we are going to just have a revolution, and the polluting fossil fuels would be a thing of the past. For a country, a tropical country like us with abundant sunlight, this would be game changing. So I would really, be looking with interest in this segment. And so the soul, I think you all in Calcutta, I don't have to emphasize the solar energy that you are experiencing right now. I'm in Mizoram, a little cooler. But so imagine if that kind of energy can be harvested and so put into use throughout the year. So that would also cool our buildings, by the way. So solar energy on one hand, and that put into mobility of cars, that put into production of everything, that would be game changing. The pollution would be half immediately, and maybe less with time. So that is something I would look into. That field is something that I would look into with a lot of interest. Beyond that, there are studies which clearly indicate that the human population levels are going to stabilize at around 2100 AD. So the human population levels are still increasing, but the growth rates are slowing. The rate of increase is slowing, and it is likely to stabilize at around 2100 AD. And so if that is so, and with time, if we are judicious with our use of resources, we use renewable energy, as we have talked about solar energy and all that, I think we would be going in the right direction. So I think ecological education, I would say ecological literacy first, and then education, which would ask people to consume less energy, less natural resources, coupled with these new technologies of renewable energy, coupled with lower human population growth in the long term, I think we can achieve a greener planet in the long term.
Oh, excellent. Very enriching points that you have mentioned. Thank you. And don't get bored, please. I have one final question. The forests which are across countries, the forests which are extended across countries, more than one country, more than two countries like that, is there any study or is there any knowledge about the preference of the wildlife to go to one country's area of forest rather than the other country's area of forest in the same stretch, continuous stretch? If there is any preference for the wildlife to go, like India, for example, India, Bangladesh and Myanmar, if there is a continuous forest spread through these three countries, for the large wildlife particularly, is there any preference? Well, for human beings, we go and shift depending on how good the economic opportunities and convenience of life is there. So that type of thing, has it been seen or observed or any study made? That's my final question for tonight. Thank you.
Yes. So I immediately cannot think of any systematic studies. There must have been some publications on that. But what I can tell you is that it is quite similar to the human activities that you have described. The animals also prefer habitats which are better protected, where their resources of food, water, cover is there in higher abundance. They prefer those areas. For an example, between the Indian Sundarbans and the Bangladesh Sundarbans is about double the size of the Indian Sundarbans. But the number of tigers in Indian Sundarbans, and especially in the last, say about 8 to 10 years, is much more. I mean, the density of tigers in Indian Sundarbans is much more. And I would say, I think the total numbers are almost equal in Bangladesh and Indian Sundarbans, although the Indian Sundarbans area is half than that of the Bangladesh Sundarbans. Similarly, when there was insurgency in Manas, the Bodo insurgency in Manas in India, but there was no such thing in the Royal Manas of Bhutan, the animal densities, populations, etc. were much higher in Bhutan, and there was hardly anything in Manas Tiger Reserve, then a national park in India, because all was decimated. The elephants were killed for ivory, the rhinos were killed for horns, tigers were killed for pelts, and so wildlife stopped coming into the Indian areas. So it is only after the Boro insurgency the accord was signed and there was peace and there was no more illegal activities in Manas, it was quickly colonized by the animals from across the borders, because there was open protected habitat now available, and it was quickly colonized. So I cannot think of any systematic study, any publications on this, but what has been the experience of conservationists, it is that habitats which are better protected, there would be higher densities on those sides than on the other sides.
Hello.
Thanks a lot.
I have a small question rather than an observation, actually. So you have talked about this ecotourism system, right? So I used to work in Arunachal Pradesh for quite a long time, actually, and visited also to Manipur regarding my work. But I found that they have a very great festival known as the Zero Festival. You must have heard about it in Arunachal Pradesh. And the Apatani tribe, I actually work with them, the Apatani tribes and the Adi tribe. Now, they used to told me that few people used to come over there in the name of the ecotourism, and they do anything beyond this ecotourism. There is no eco in the ecotourism. Like when I visited Jim Corbett, so I found people are wearing flashy clothes, they're clicking pictures of the tigers, they are chit-chatting and all that. So the awareness about this ecotourism system is nowhere near to this ecosystem or the ecological concept. So what are the policymakers or the top persons are doing in the system to promote this kind of a sense among the common people, what to do and what not to do when you are visiting a forest or any places like this where this reservation is, or but this kind of reservation is a really great concern. What's your take on it?
Certainly, I share your concerns, and I have worked in Govt for some length of time as a researcher, and definitely the so-called Delhi crowd is there, and they are loud. They have no idea why they have come there, and they are just enjoying themselves, and which they could have done in their drawing rooms. Now the thing is that there are two facets of this thing. So one is an urban crowd. If they see a wild tiger, there is a very high chance that they would remember that encounter for the rest of their lives, and there would be a new constituency for conservation. People who are not concerned about conservation can be converted, by the ambassadors like wild tigers. So there is a need to show people who are not wildlife oriented, to show them wildlife. Tiger is an extreme example, but even if they enjoy the bliss of nature, walking along a trail, taking a bath in a forest pool, etc., in the buffer area, it is possible for them to appreciate nature and appreciate the need for conservation of nature. So even for the uninitiated, the loud and the messy, there is a cause to show them nature, so that some of them gets converted and we have a larger constituency for conservation. So I would say that it is the price that tigers pay. The tigers in the tourism zone of Corbett or Kanha, those tigers endure disturbances daily. I say that is the price that the tigers are paying. Those tigers are paying for the conservation of their species. It is they're taking it for the team. So, but you see those wild tigers, right? There are only those few tigers that you can see who are gracing the tourism zones of these tiger reserves. So that is the price that the tigers, or that for that matter other wildlife, is paying for creating a constituency, which is also the functions of zoos, etc. Now, but that does not mean that this should go uncontrolled. So there are policies in all of the tiger reserves of maintaining certain distances from the wild animals. There are policies of certain behavior practices which is to be followed by the guides, which is to be ensured by the guides, so that the tourists follow those practices. And the gypsies and the guides are often, their services are suspended, so their earnings are nil for few weeks to few months if those are not followed. So those checks and balances are there. The tourists are fined for littering, for untoward behaviors, and there is carrying capacity study by NTCA, which takes into account the length of the roads in the tourism zones, and so maintaining a safe distance from each other. So how many gypsies can be allowed in the morning and in the evening? So those kind of carrying capacity of tourism studies are there, and it is largely followed in the tiger reserves. So those are the measures which are in place, but I fully agree with you, especially for places like Zero and all. People go to have offbeat experiences, but there is a dire need for them to be sensitive to the local culture, to be sensitive to the local biodiversity, and I would say so in the Eagle Nest example, there is a very thorough briefing for the tourists. But I mean, Eagle Nest is so specific because tourists are coming for the bougainvillea chikla, so they are already generally accomplished birders. But beyond that, Zero is a music festival. So music festival would not attract always biodiversity and conservation enthusiasts. So so that need to brief them is there. I think the festival organizers would have to pay more heed and can partner with the forest department in the long run to have more sensitive ecotourism.
Yeah, thank you so much. Nicely explained. Thank you.
There is a question in the chat box by Sanchari Sarkar.
Let me read it. So Sanchari Sarkar has written that Northeast proves to be rich in biodiversity. What are the key reasons according to you for such a scenario? And what is the best time to visit the same to explore the avian diversity? Yeah, so it is one of the biodiversity hotspots. One reason is that the altitudinal gradient. So and the geomorphology of the place is such that you have high rainfall. So because of high rainfall, you have dense forest historically, and because of the altitudinal gradient, you have the grasslands of Kaziranga. Starting from there, you have the snow peaks in Arunachal, the cold desert of Arunachal, and evergreen forest, deciduous forest, everything in between, tropical evergreen forests. So that is why, because of the high rainfall and the geomorphology and the altitudinal gradient, we have extreme diversity in Northeast, and it is one of the global biodiversity hotspots. The best time is winter, because some of the high altitude species, they come down into the lower altitude, and you can see much more diversity in the lower altitudes than in the summers. Summers, many of the species are in the higher altitudes and less visible, less easily visible. It is still visible, but you have to trek to higher altitudes. But winters are better.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. I think the discussion portion was very enriching, as well as the talk. And if there is no more question, then I would like to request Dr. Sandeep Majumdar, Assistant Professor, Department of Conservation Biology, to give the vote of thanks. Sir, please.
Good evening, sir.
Thank you.
Am I audible?
I think someone is. Hello.
Is there any more
Hello.
question?
Yes, I have a
think
question.
so. Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
Go
Please
for it.
ahead.
Go.
Sir, my question would be that many highway and expressway projects are coming up, and in the matters of Northeast, the central government has promised good highway connectivity in the future. So what are the effects will the forests and wildlife have on it?
I think your question is the opposite, that what are the effects the highways will have on forests and wildlife?
Yes,
So,
sir, exactly, sir.
Yeah. So yes, certainly there would be generally detrimental effect on forest and wildlife, no doubt about it. But the exact effect would be case specific and site specific. So for some areas, like I'm saying about Dampa, so the BSF is building a border road. Okay. So I think you have highlighted an issue which I have not dealt with. So there is an infrastructural boost in Northeast. It is true, and because of that, wildlife would be on the receiver's end. That is also true. And Dampa again typifies this thing because of this border road infrastructure. So there would be site-specific impacts, and there can be site-specific remedial measures. Like for Dampa, what I know is that the BSF was given the clearance to make this road on certain conditions. The conditions imposed on that was that there are 7 streams or small rivers, you can say, which are passing from Dampa into Bangladesh. Okay. So there is a large river, which is the Sazek River, locally called the Sazek River, which is the border between Mizoram and Bangladesh. And the Sazek River, there are 7 large streams which are joining the Sazek River along this 62-kilometer boundary. We might be aware that these streams often dry, with water in only one of their portions. These are animal highways. These are used by animals for passing from one area into the other. So these 7 streams, the border roads were asked to keep open for animal use, and they have kept it open. So they have built bridges over these, pretty high bridges over these streams, so that animals can have an underpass. It is ecologically called an underpass, so animals can pass below. So even elephants can pass below. Most of the streams have that good underpass. So this was a site-specific remedial measure. So definitely there would be an impact. There would be no free movement all along the 62-kilometer border. But of course, the security concerns of the nation will also have to be addressed. So BSF road and BSF outposts were allowed. But these 7 streams would allow genetic exchange between the populations of Dampa and the neighboring Bangladesh forests. So this was a compromise. So similar compromises have been arrived at different locations of Northeast, and also can be arrived at for future such projects. So that is there. But also keep in mind that along the China border and all, where the most emphasis on infrastructure is there, cold deserts, roads are not as detrimental as roads can be through tropical forests. Okay, because cold deserts are generally open, and if there is less amount of traffic, it is almost part of the landscape. So in cold desert, roads are not as detrimental as it is through tropical forests. So to summarize what I responded, infrastructural boost will have, generally speaking, a negative effect on forest and biodiversity, but there are and there can be site-specific remedial measures, and the infrastructural boost is mostly in the cold desert areas of China border, where the impact would be less. There would be impact, but it would be less than impact of infrastructure in the tropical forest areas of rest of Northeast. Thanks.
Well, thank you, sir, for all your patience to listen all the questions and address them. Well, good evening to one and all who is present here with us for this special lecture on wildlife conservation issues in Northeast India, Dampa Tiger Reserve as a case study to commemorate the Earth Day. On behalf of Durgapur Government College, its entire fraternity and the organizing committee, I feel immense pleasure to take this opportunity to propose a vote of thanks. We express our sincere gratitude to our respected principal, Durgapur Government College, and patron of this special lecture, Dr. Devnath Palit, for his constant encouragement and extending every possible help to organize this event and to spare time to be here with us for giving the welcome speech of this special lecture. We extend our heartfelt thanks and gratitude to our wonderful speaker of the day, Shri Agni Mitra, for accepting our invitation and to spare some time from his busy schedule to be here with us for this special lecture. I believe that he has enriched our participants regarding various issues on wildlife conservation in Northeast India by his excellent presentation and deliberation. We are extremely thankful to you, sir. We are also thankful to Professor Subroto Ghosh, Coordinator IQAC, and Dr. Shubhajit Ojha, Secretary Teachers Council, Durgapur Government College, who have always extended their constant support and encouragement to organize this event and to be here with us on this platform. We are utmost thankful to all the participants, students, scholars, and dignitaries, without whom this event would not have been a success. I also thank all the teachers and non-teaching staff of Durgapur Government College for their continuous support. I sincerely thank all the members of the organizing committee for enthusiastically organizing this special lecture event. Once again, I thank one and all wholeheartedly. Now I request all the participants to fill up and submit the feedback form which has been posted in the chat box positively in order to get the certificate. Thank you. Anything else, Dr. Bhattacharya?
No, thank you, sir. Thank you so much. As we conclude this lecture, let us carry forward the spirit of Earth Day. Let's continue to nurture and protect our planet, not just for ourselves, but for all the life that calls Earth home. Thank you all for joining us today. And please do fill up the feedback form that is provided in the chat box. You will get a system generated certificate via email. Thanks again. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you all.